everybody. Welcome to Navigating New Narratives with Cheyenne and Raynell. Today we do not have a guest today because we want to talk a little bit about what recovery looks like for us and what we've noticed in some of the recovery narratives just around not only Thunder Bay, but across Canada, how recovery looks different for everybody, and how there is not only stigma against addict, but there's actually stigma in the recovery community as well. So that's what we want to talk about. I'm gonna let Raynell start, and yeah, and we're just gonna kind of go from there.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna go a little bit into my own experience with recovery communities and what it looked like for me, especially at the beginning when I got out of treatment. So my journey went into second stage, which was I went into like a beautiful home with a bunch of other women, and we were all learning how to like integrate back into society safely and slowly learning life skills. I'll just bring up a quick kind of funny story. I remember when I
Yeah.
first went there, we had like chores that we needed to do, and everybody had to cook for the house like once or twice a week. And I remember it was like it was my first time doing that. And I was like so nervous because I was like, man, I've never cooked a meal in like years. And I'm
Right?
like cooking for the whole house. It was like so nerve-wracking, but it also gave me the ability and the skills to like get comfortable in the kitchen and learn how to do that for myself, because before it was like butter tarts and ice caps,
Right. Exactly.
sugar.
Yep. Anything you can find at Max. That's what we ate.
Basically, right?
Yeah.
Um so my recovery process there was I was really a really active person in the NA and the AA scene there. I mean, like I go to meetings like every single day, sometimes twice a day. And I was working actively on the steps, and I had a sponsor, and I was really close with my sponsor. And it was actually a pretty good experience because she'd call me out on my bullshit, and especially when I was trying to play like victim and blaming other people. I'm still stuck in that cycle, right? Of blaming other people instead of looking at my part in the scenarios that I was explaining in my step work. So
Yeah.
I used to bring all the girls to meetings with me. Like I was um, really active in the NA and the AA thing. So that worked for me at the beginning.
Yeah.
Um, that gave me a bit of like community, and I'd like to like mention I was doing second stage in Surrey, BC, so it's pretty big there.
Yeah.
So all the meetings, like you'd find different people all the time. It wasn't like a condensed group of individuals, it was pretty like widespread.
Yeah.
um so everybody was typically welcomed no matter what. It was it was comfortable for me going there. And then basically I made the decision to come back to Thunder Bay, and I was nervous. I was really nervous about that. But at that point, I'd spent like 6 or 7 months in BC during the whole like treatment, second stage, all of that whole journey
Yeah.
was like 6 or 7 months. So um I was scared to come back to Thunder Bay. I didn't know what that was going to look like or what I was going to be confronted with. So um, I looked for a sponsor in Thunder Bay before I got here. Went to meeting um, pretty quickly
Yeah.
here in Thunder Bay, and yeah, it was uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
It was small, and it was kind of triggering for me, and it felt very like cliquish for me. So I never went back. I
Yeah.
went to one meeting when I got back to Thunder Bay, and I never that was I stayed in kind of contact with my sponsor from Surrey for a little bit just while I got adjusted. I was living with my grandparents. And I like just want to say thank you to them for taking me in.
Yeah.
That was a big contributing factor to a lot of like the reasons why I was successful in my journey in recovery
Yeah.
is they gave me like safe space. Um yeah, and just like a good environment to adjust in and
Definitely.
supported me in a positive way, right? So I just kind of want to acknowledge too that not everybody has that. They go to
Exactly.
treatment, they come back, um, and they go back to the same environment, and we know like things that need to change are people, places, and things, right? So if we go back in the same environment, it's like the success rate, in my opinion, is low. And even in my experience, like that's this recent time wasn't the first time that I had gone to treatment. I went before and I went right back into the same place I was living in the same neighborhood around the same people and relapsed pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So um, again, thank you to my grandparents for opening their door to me, even though I
Yeah.
wasn't the nicest or um, best granddaughter for several years.
Yeah.
Um, they gave me that opportunity. So yeah, so for me now, recovery is just do having purpose, going back to school, being an active parent in my son's life, like having purpose um is my recovery, and that works for me.
Yep.
um Cheyenne probably knows this too. Like a lot of people say, if you're not doing AA or you're not doing NA, then you're hard knuckling it, is what it's called.
Hmm.
And that's where Cheyenne mentioned where the stigma in the recovery community comes from,
Yeah.
right? If you're not in that program, then other people think you're not doing recovery right.
Yeah.
And I want to just say there's no such thing as the right or wrong way. It's what works for you ultimately that is what your recovery looks like. So I'm not active in NA or AA now, and I haven't been for years.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to say I'm not hard knuckling it. I'm like
Right.
living a beautiful full experience, doing recovery my own way. So
Yeah.
it's kind of where I'll leave that. I'll let Cheyenne talk about a little bit about her recovery experience and what that looked like for her. But I think the point that we're trying to make is like recovery is different for everybody,
Right.
right? So
Exactly.
yeah,
And I I never did NA or NA. Like ever. I just started because my fiance is like a huge AA NA like advocate. So he was like when me and him first got together, he says, "Oh, Shine, like I'm surprised you have not relapsed. I'm surprised that you are still sober. Because you're white knuckling it through life." And I thought to myself, like, you have no idea what my life looked like for the past 3 years before, or 3.5 years before we met. Um, so for me, like, I was in jail, and I remember thinking to myself in the cell, I said, this is obviously something that you want, because if you didn't want it in some way, shape, or form, you wouldn't be doing it. So um, my dad is not a religious person whatsoever. I was never raised religious, but the chaplain at the jail said, "Why don't you go to bed tonight and give and surrender to God? Say, I give you my life. It's like I surrender. Like I'm done. Like I can't do it anymore." So I did. I woke up the next morning and the whole world just seemed brighter. I had a lot of faith in a higher power in jail. Then my dad got me connected with a lady who brought me to church once I got out. And let me tell you that so quickly after going to church did my faith diminish, because I I I don't see myself in that way. Like, for me to believe the Bible word for word, beginning of the Bible, I just can't do it. Like I don't believe that God has to be who somebody else tells you that God is, or your higher power, or whoever that person may be. My spirituality went down for quite a while. I'm getting it back. Like I do like to kind of pray and just be like, "Oh man, like just let me spend today not doing this, not doing that." So with the N, okay, so the problem I have with NA and AA, I do have a problem with it. And it is not that I do not want to take accountability for my actions because I did a lot of really crappy things on the street. Like really crappy things. I was not a nice person. I would walk into people's houses and try to take everything I could off of everybody. Like I was
Right.
not a good, I did a lot of bad things. So don't get me wrong there. But when I look at what led me to my addiction and the trauma and everything that was done to me, I believe that it's okay to tell yourself that was not okay for that to happen to me because you start to build beliefs around yourself about the things that have happened to you in your life. So, say you have an abusive mother. I did have a very abusive mother when I was a child. You start to internalize the things that they say to you. You're this, you're that, you're not a good person. Then you start to make friends and you start to get a boyfriend and they start to treat you diff bad things start happening to you. And then you start to think to yourself, well, am I a bad person? Did I deserve these things? Like, why are these things happening to me? And the thing that I think is lacking in NA and AA is allowing yourself to grieve the process of what brought you into the addiction and the things that happened to you in addiction. That's the one thing that's lacking in that whole 12 steps. I notice it's like tell yourself that you are powerless over alcohol and drugs. Man, I knew that from the second I took a line when I was like 15 years old. Like I took that line and I was like, I never not want to be doing lines. Like my brain, I have an addictive personality through and through. That was not something that I needed to admit to myself. I knew it right away. Um, Finding a higher power. That's a hard thing for a lot of people to do. A lot of people can't find it. That's not a defining characteristic of finding sobriety, I don't think. It does, you don't have to choose um I guess I don't want to call it religion, but you don't have to devote yourself to something bigger than yourself to like that's a hard concept to wrap your head around. And I think that that's where a lot of people get stuck in that program. But say if you get past that, then you start to do your resentments and things like that. And yes, you should not hold resentments. That does more damage than good to you. Um, I haven't gotten further in the steps, but I know you talk about sex conduct and then you just kind of practice these principles in your everyday life and you become grateful for your life and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. But where in there are you actually addressing the mental health, the trauma, the thing? So what I believe about the NA and the AA program, and like you said about the treatment center in BC, and like you said about having a supportive grandparents and me having a supportive dad and kids, is I think the key to all of these things is the community. And it's when you feel like you have this sense of community, that's what the factor is. I don't think it's all the little nitpicky things that go along with it. I think it's once you feel like you have connected with somebody, whoever that may be, you have purpose, like you said, meaningful employment, a purpose, you feel good, you feel like you have a family, people you can turn to at any moment. I find that that's the key, no matter what avenue you choose to get sober. And I know a lot of people who have gotten sober just completely on their own. They just stop and that's it. And then some of them may be miserable, but they're alone. They're alone in their misery, So I feel like the community, and then with the click thing in the AA and NA community, I do see that in Thunder Bay. Um, and it is a natural thing to find people that you connect with and that you're friends with and stick with them, definitely. but I think for others, it's kind of like high school where you go into to somewhere where everything is already pretty established and you got
Yeah.
to try to find your way to fit in some way somehow, you know? And when you're
See,
already,
I think
yeah,
I think for myself, that's what I found difficult coming back is because like it brought me back to um my younger days where I was like bullied or not included or fear of that of not being included. So I just kind of
right.
like was like I'm not putting myself through these reliving these traumatic moments that I've experienced before in my life. So yeah, that's a really good point. Is like it's definitely about community.
Yeah,
Um and people finding those connections. And I think a lot of people find that in AA and
yeah,
NA. Like it's a lot about community and building like these really strong friendships.
that's
But
what it
I
is.
think it's difficult for newcomers when they come in and they see that. And at least my experience is like you just see the regular, I don't even want to say regular, that's not the right word to be using, but this active recovery community, like always going out and doing things together. And that makes sense for them. Of course, they found like trust, connection, community with each other. That's a beautiful thing.
Totally.
But I think it's Thunder Bay small. I think it's difficult for some people to see that, especially if they have childhood traumas associated with abandonment,
Right.
um, bullying, all of those types of things. So, at least for me in my experience, and that's what I can talk to the most is like that's maybe that was the underlying issue on why I just didn't participate when I came back to Thunder Bay. But
Yeah.
like you said, I had community with my grandparents. I had connection there. I was seeing my son all the time,
You were going to
actively.
school.
So
School is a big thing. Like feeling
100%.
accomplishment, like having a sense of like personal accomplishment in your life and like seeing things like happen for you that you never thought would happen, you know, in addiction, things like that. Totally. And I this is going to sound so bad and I'm going to get so much flack for this, but I actually told my fiance the other day, I said, you guys are like a cult. Like, I'm sorry. But like your AA and NA community, you're like a cult because it's like they tell me like if you aren't doing things this way, that way, this way, then you're not doing it right. You know, like you need to be doing this and this and it's not even them, it's my own fiance telling me this. Like he'll be like, well, what did you like, you know? And I said, okay, you recover your way, like, and you let me do my thing. Like just because it worked, like I just remember him always telling me, like, you're not even working a program. How are you not even working a program? You know, all you're doing is white knuckling it. You like, I can't believe you have not relapsed. There's no way in heck I'm ever relapsing. Like it's never happening for me. Like my life is that, and then I won't mention the name of the person. It's a person I love very deeply, but I will not mention the name. They told me because they have a different way than myself and you. Me and you have a very similar recovery journey. Like we goal set and we find those types
Yeah,
of ways to make ourselves like, you know, get out of that mind frame. And we find our family and our community and our whatever. We have the same way of recovering. She does not do that and she does not do AANA. But one time she tells me, she says, why would I ever go somewhere and call myself an addict when I'm not an addict anymore and introduce myself and say, hi, I'm an addict? And then she also said, why would I ever celebrate my recovery date? That's over. That's done with. That's in the past. There like I don't even know the date. I don't want to know the date. What's the point of the date? Like I'm not going to be counting my days and then oops if I slipped now it's a big deal. Like, you know, there is no slips. There is no days. It's done. You know what I mean? So like so she had a totally different way because I do like celebrating my sobriety day. I find,
me too.
yeah, I
Yeah.
find that that's a good, but not for that person. You know, it's like it was done and over with, and that's it. And then there's some people that, you know, it's done and over with for them, and they never look back. They don't even think about it. It's just, That's it. Like that's the past. The past is the past. We leave the past alone. That was kind of the way I did do it, but it did bring me a lot of shame. My platform on Facebook really helped with my shame, letting it go. What I need to work on is my trauma. Never mind my, like, the drugs aren't the problem for me. There's nothing, there's no inch of my body that says I want to go do drugs or drink alcohol. It's all of my past traumas that come out in weird ways in my life. That's what I need to address. So, yeah, like, yeah, so I just, one of the shows that me and Raynell really want to do is we want to have somebody who has all these differing recovery narratives, and we want to kind of talk about, that was the thing, that was one of the ideas we had, was to have somebody who's very involved in NA, someone who's a little bit more like us, somebody who has a different approach, just a whole bunch of different views on recovery, because there shouldn't be stigma within the recovery community. We get it
Right.
enough outside of the recovery community that to have it inside is so sad. But it is human nature, but at the same time, like that's another thing that we need to address is that, right?
Yeah. So another thing when we're talking about like stigma in the recovery community, this is something we probably could have just spent like a whole episode on, but is like one of the things that I also don't agree with NA or AA is when people are on Suboxone or methadone
Right.
and are no longer using
Yeah.
problematic substances, that they're not considered to be have a sober date yet, or like they're not in recovery, they're still using
Yeah.
even though they're just strictly on methadone, Sublocade or Suboxone. And for me, that's not right. Like
That is
if
not right at
you're
all.
going in and you have carries and you're having clean screens for a certain amount of time and you continue going, like you are, in my opinion, like you're recovering, like you're in recovery,
Yep.
you're doing all the things. Like those harm reduction tools give you the ability to live your life
Right.
in a productive way, the way the goals that you want to achieve, you can do them on those.
Oh,
And I
totally.
think it was Cheyenne who had shared a Facebook post maybe like a week or so ago explaining what addiction is. And it's I've also watched a video where it basically says like I don't know even want to use the word you're considered an addict, but
Yeah.
you're struggling with addiction, you have a problematic relationship with substances when you're not able to do the day-to-day things,
Right.
basically,
Right. Exactly.
right?
Yep. And
So
that's the definition in the DSM-5. You only have a substance use disorder if it is causing you a problematic to have problematic behaviors in life, work, personal relationships. That's the only way that it's considered. So you're correct. You're 100% correct on that.
so that's what's frustrating. It's like if these harm reduction tools are working for individuals, giving them their life back, their ability to be an active part in their family, achieve their goals, do the things, like then they don't have a problem with substances.
No.
Like, and there is also people who choose and can use substances randomly and live their life perfectly, like normally, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And
Yep.
not have the problematic relationships. And I think, like Cheyenne had mentioned, like that stems from, at least I can say and agree with her in my personal experience, from traumatic situations that that fed that addiction in my life.
Yeah.
What was that? So yeah, I don't agree with NA or AA because they're methadone, Suboxone, and Sublocade are considered mind-altering substances,
Right. And
but that doesn't make sense.
no, it
Like,
doesn't. I have a lady that I spoke to. She's been sober 10 years, and she's been on I want to say methadone, either methadone or Suboxone for 10 years. And this lady, it allowed her to have her entire family be a mom, go through all of these really hard times and make it through without doing drugs. 10 years. And you're going to tell this lady that she's not a sober lady and congratulate her on her accomplishment?
Right?
That's the most amazing thing I've ever heard in my life. That, like, 'cause I'm not going to tell her story because it's not my story to tell. But the stuff that she had to go through while being quote unquote not sober, to, according to some people, would have led
Yeah.
anybody else back down the crack or on the streets or doing whatever it may be that you were doing before. So that's saving
Right.
her life. That's Suboxone or that methadone. And she tells me, people tell me all the time, I'm not sober. I'm not sober. I'm not sober. Sorry for
Well,
my
do you know what else is like,
pardon my French. Fuck them and what they say. You of
right?
course you're sober. Are you kidding me? Do you know what the alternative is? Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah,
Yeah, like what also is so like wild to me in those situations is what ends up happening is people don't tell anybody. So they're sitting with a secret,
yeah,
feeling shame because they're using a recovery tool that's working for them and not saying anything. Because what happens is they tell somebody and then somebody says, "Oh, well, you actually can't go get your 6 month chip because you're using substances."
yeah.
And then it's like shame and guilt, and it's like that's horrible.
It is. It
That's
is.
that's horrible to feel proud that you have made it this far with a tool that works for you to be told that no,
Yeah,
you're not actually sober. How diminishing, discouraging, and
yep,
disappointing is that? That's
totally.
horrible.
Thank
That's
you for bringing
horrible.
that up because I never I've thought about that a lot, but I was not going to bring it up. It totally escaped my mind. So thank you for bringing that up because that's a huge point in recovery. And another thing is like when I spoke about that one, cocaine line I took, and I was like, I never want to stop doing cocaine. At that point in my life, I was being spit on by my boyfriend in front of women that he was cheating on me with, and them look like I was being bullied to the point of like where I wanted to kill myself. Of course, that cocaine line, I never wanted it to stop. You take it and you're like, oh my gosh, everything is amazing. My whole like me wanting to kill myself every single night and feeling like the ugliest, disgustingest person in the world, bullied all the time, no friends. Now I feel good. I feel great. Like of course that's what's going to happen. Like it's and then it's mental health as well. Like I've had anxiety my whole life as a child. I'm sure you suffer from mental health. Another thing is people shame people for being on medication that their doctor prescribed for them for PTSD, ADHD, anxiety because they're narcotic medications. What? Like those are things that those people that they need because their brains don't work properly. The neurotransmitters in their brains are not functioning in the right way. So, regardless of whatever program you're working, you're not getting any full benefits of anything. Like if you have a depressive brain, your brain is so low on serotonin, you don't,
I was just gonna say
yeah, exactly.
it's so wild because like a lot of the time when people first start using substances, it actually balances particular
Exactly.
it balances things in your brain so that way like you can actually function at the beginning stages because you're like, oh, I feel better. You
Yeah,
feel better because some particular drugs react with like serotonin and dopamine and all different things that your brain may be lacking at that point in time. So it's like a temporary substitute for the medication that you should be on. So
exactly.
it's so wild. It's just like
It
it
really
just
is.
blows my mind because I'm like I really focus like on a harm reduction approach,
Yep.
and that's ultimately what keeps the person safest in that moment in time, right? Like you're going
Right.
to do what you're going to do, but how can we help you do it safely? So it's just like people finally getting diagnosed and having that opportunity and getting on the medication and they're going to be shamed for it. It's
Yeah,
just
no.
like
And that's the kind of people that people in new recovery, that's the kind of people they need. People like yourself or myself or anybody else who follows them in their journey the way their journey needs to be, not the way
Right.
you think their journey needs to be, the way it has to be for them, not your own. You
100%.
have to leave your personal opinions out of it. If it's I've never done Suboxone or anything, but I was never on opioids. I was only on cocaine. But say if I was and I needed Suboxone, would everybody on, like, if I were to reveal right now, I've been on Suboxone for the past 5.5 years, what would people say? Would everybody be shaming me at this point, saying, "Oh, well, Cheyenne, you were just a big crook on Facebook, calling yourself sober when you actually weren't?" No, like, you know what I mean? So I feel like people
It's
are,
so sad because
that's probably exactly what would
that's
happen.
that is
Yeah.
it is that's exactly probably what would happen, and it's just like wild. Like I'll be the first to say, like, I was on methadone. It worked for me the first time when I found out that I was pregnant with Nathaniel. I went on methadone and I got sober that way. I got all my carries
Yeah.
and that worked for me for the first time. You and maybe this is something I could talk about later, but basically like I got sober on my own and I did it for my son
Yes.
at that point in time. But I didn't address any of my trauma. I
Right.
didn't address or talk about any of the underlying things. I didn't do it for myself. I did it for my son.
Yeah.
Needless to say, years later, I relapsed, and that brought me to like this long, wild stint in my problematic relationship with substances.
Yeah.
So in that time, I um, went on Sublocade,
Yeah.
um, and that worked for me. Like
Yeah.
I, for one, didn't have to worry about like overdose as much on that. Um, and it actually gave me the ability to spend more time, like scheduled meetings with my son,
Yeah.
because I didn't wake up feeling super sick every day, having to spend every day hustling for whatever I needed that day. So Sublocade is like those things work for people, and it helps people get um their life back on track.
100%.
And I think it's a beautiful thing. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily think it should be a forever thing,
Yeah.
but I think it is a tool that works to get people to where they want to go
And and uh,
ultimately.
and another thing is, who are we to tell them if they're sober or not? Who's anybody to tell anybody about anything other than, if you have not walked a minute in somebody else's shoes, there's nothing that you can say to that person that is, you have nothing to say to that person. You have
Right.
nothing to, no judgment to pass on that person, period. Whatever it may
Right.
be. Exactly. So, and it's funny because I my dad and myself and my aunt and my uncle, we were all sitting there one time and they were having some sort of talk about, I don't remember what it was, but I interrupted them all and I said, "You realize that we know nothing, right? I know nothing, you know nothing, you know nothing. Not one of us knows one freaking thing about anything. So we're really, like, even the things that we think we know, we actually don't know. We like, nobody knows nothing. These are all theories. Everything in
Right.
life is a theory. There is scientific things that we have found and backed up with science, but at the same time, can we say it's 100%? Like, do you know what? We're all researchers, like in
Yeah.
universities. We're researching and finding new things every day, and we're throwing out old ideas and bringing in new ones. And okay, wait a minute, we thought it was this, but now we added this variable, and now this is happening. So, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, the only thing that needs to happen is compassion, empathy, and support. Those are the only things that are human inside things that we can give. That's what we can give. That's what we are as humans, is we are able to be empathetic, compassionate, and and be there for people and support. And before, the world, like, became in the billions, We were just a tiny tribe of people, and we worked together, and nobody wanted to get excluded from the tribe, and everybody worked for the betterment of their community. And that's kind of
Right.
what needs to happen
How
with,
beautiful would that be
right?
if we could all just treat everybody with a little bit of understanding, compassion, and empathy,
Yeah,
right? Like, how beautiful of a community would we have if we just stopped judging people when we know nothing about their situation or what they've gone through or what they're currently going through? Like, why don't we just sit down and have a conversation with the person and like, I'll say there are times when I catch myself and I have a bias or I'm
yep,
judging somebody,
yep,
but
yep,
in that moment I check myself and
yep,
I remind myself like that is not who I am.
yep,
That's not who I want to be.
right.
And like I go talk to the person so I can
Yeah,
have a better understanding. Like I really do my best not to ever exclude anyone for any reason.
right.
Um I really just like live my life trying to walk around with like love and light for
Exactly.
all people, for all animals, for
Yep.
like for
Yes.
trees. Like I go
Yep.
for walks in the morning, I bring my
Yep.
dog and I'll like hold a tree for a minute.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you
Like
know what? Even us talking about the NAA community, I like me and you have our opinions on it, but I understand their side of it so much. Like I
works for a lot of
love
people.
I love the fact that they have all gotten so sober together and that they are such a wonderful, supportive family of each other. It's amazing. Like, I'm
It
not
is.
judging them either. I understand it. I just know that maybe by talking about this, maybe they can understand an outsider's point of view.
Well, that's exactly it. We're
That's it.
bringing the perspective, which is what this podcast is
Yeah.
for, bringing, changing the narrative, bringing new narratives, like letting
Yes.
people understand from an outsider's point of view. This is things that I experience. This is what other people have shared with Cheyenne and I. So
Yeah.
it's like nothing changes if nothing changes, and nothing
Right.
can change if nobody's aware that
Exactly.
that's what's happening.
And
So
even for me, I've had quite a few people tell me what they think about me from the outside perspective. And you know what? I take it in. Like some of the times, like, when it's just flat out like mean and racist and rude. I don't take those in, but some of the stuff, it's like I think to myself, like where they say, you really love attention. And I think to myself, like, you know what, I am loving the attention. And the reason why I'm loving the attention is there is a reason behind it, is because I've been so excluded and bullied my whole life that this is the first time I've had so much support. But what if that support were to go away on me? Then where am I getting you know what I mean? So I check myself where I'm like, okay, yes, it's great you have all of the support, but you got to make sure that you still feel accomplished on the inside and you have your
mhm,
internal validation, not
yeah.
just the external. So like I thank people for their look, for what I look like on the outside, like to them, and I see it, and people, and my fiance calls me out on some stuff. My dad calls me out on so many things. I won't even go there, but I love my dad to pieces and he loves me to pieces, and it's all just constructive talk. And that's what we're trying to do. Um, so with that being said, I don't know how long this episode has been so far, but I want to leave it with anybody in the NARA community that have watched this episode who would like to come on and speak on their behalf. Please message Raynell and I, and we would love to do an episode with you. Constructive, like completely constructive criticism, constructive ideas, like constructive, what's the
Just
opposite of,
open-minded.
yeah,
We're
what's
just
the opposite of
open-minded,
criticism? I can't think of it right.
authentic.
Yes, yes, just
We're interested in hearing from you.
a
So
hundred
reach
percent.
out. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I would love it. Please reach out. We're gonna end the episode. We have a very exciting episode tomorrow. We're being featured on another podcast from a lady. What is her podcast called? I forget what it is. Everyone is addicted.
I think everyone is an addict or everyone is addicted.
Yeah,
I
something like
can't.
that. And she's on TV. She also has her own YouTube channel. She's going to promote our podcast, and she's going to have us on as guests. Um, we will share we will share her podcast on our we'll share our guest appearance on her podcast on our page as well, so that you can see me and Raynell as guests instead of hosts. So
Yeah, and then once we do that too, you guys should go check her out as well. Give her some love.
100%,
Um, yeah,
definitely.
so that's exciting. We're gonna have some really great episodes coming up. So we look forward
Yeah.
to sharing that with you. And
Yeah,
yeah,
the next one will be a guest episode, but she will be anonymous, and that will come out next Thursday. I don't know what that date is. Thursday, let me just check
the
the
18th.
Thursday the 17th. 17th. So this one will come out this week, and
Oh,
yeah, and we'll have the guest episode coming out on the 17th. And you don't want to miss that one. It's going to be a great one. All right, have a good night, everybody. Bye.